Guys, a pleasure as always to be joined by the voice of the Lions, Fox 2 sports director, the great Dan Miller. Dan, how you doing, my friend?
Hey,
Thanks
Dano.
for the time, buddy.
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Doing really good today. I want to start with this, Dan. This draft, and I know you had an opportunity to speak to Brad Holmes over the weekend. You know, what started out as kind of like a what's he doing on draft night quickly turned into man, this is a good draft. Is that kind of how you saw the 24-hour period from round one to the end of the draft, as they say?
Yeah, I definitely think Thursday night there was a lot of like, what are they doing? And just as you said, and some gasps and some, let me say this, okay? To me, the draft it can get a little irritating because everybody's an expert. And it's a little bit like if you have a couple talking points, you can become a Twitter scout. And all of a sudden, you know, your opinions are gold. That's just my take. Doesn't have to be yours. But yeah, no doubt. There were some people that look. There's some people that don't believe you should ever draft a running back in round one, and there's some people that don't look at you know, an off-ball linebacker is something that you should draft in round one. And you know what? If that works for them and their franchise, that's great. Talking to Brad Holmes, look, this is their board. This is the way they're going to go through the process. They're going to live with the results because you own the results. You drafted the players. And I think they're perfectly comfortable with that. They drafted guys for their window right now. They drafted guys that they believe will come in and help them right away. And, you know, we were talking about this the other day on the Sunday night show. And, you know, I hear people say, well, what about a second contract and this and that? Man, 4 to 5 years from now is an eternity in the National Football League. And this team is in their window, they believe, to win this division, get in the playoffs, see what they can make happen right now. So, look, I get some of the criticism because it might buck traditional values, but I think they're perfectly comfortable with the way that they did it, and I think they're perfectly comfortable if they have two players that can step in and make a big impact right away.
Dan, always a pleasure to talk to you. For those people that don't subscribe to the first round running back camp, well, talk about Ezekiel Elliott's rookie year, 13-3, over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. Last year, Saquon Barkley, what he did, and Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. I mean, they didn't lose a game that he played in except the one without their quarterback, Brock Purdy. So you can tell those guys that. Let me ask you a question. Outside of Jahmyr Gibbs, who was the pick that really, really, really did it for you in this draft? What was the pick that you looked at and said, this pick I love?
Well, I think probably Branch, just because people didn't think that he was going to get there. And if I can throw out one other thing about the draft that kind of bugs me a little bit, and then I'll circle back.
I love it, Dan, because it bothers me too.
Maz's favorite phrase.
It bothers me
back,
too.
Here's
Everybody's
the thing,
an expert.
No, everybody's an expert, and here's the thing. And this isn't just about what the Lions did, but if they had drafted Brian Branch at 12 or 18, people would have been like, yes. And people would have been like, that's a great pick. So they take him at 45, and this isn't in any way shade at the young man, and I'll get back to him in a second, but they draft him at 45, and all of a sudden, it's a steal. All of a sudden, it's the best pick they've made, which to me ignores the fact that 44 times NFL general managers passed on him. So you'd have been happy at 18, but he fell to 45, and he didn't fall by accident. Everybody knew he was on the board.
Yeah.
And it's celebrated. You can't have it both ways. And that's where this thing kind of just makes your head spin a little bit. That said, look, he's a really exciting player who got knocked back by his testing at the combine and running a 4.58. But I think while speed is certainly a large component of what you do, so too are instincts, so too are the nastiness and the grit that he plays with, the way that he'll come up and hit you. I think they're really excited about what he can do for them. He might be a guy that there's not a spot for right away because of the help that they've brought in the secondary this year. But a couple of those guys are on one-year contracts, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Mosley as well. They're both one-year contracts, so he could slide right in next year. But I think he'll get some snaps. I think he's going to become a core special teams player right off the bat. I think he's intriguing to me. I tell you, Broderick Martin is a guy, if you look at him, not a complete product by any means, but a 338-pound man that's got some ability to move, and you don't find those very often. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, what can happen with him? Because it's a position of need for this football team. What can happen with him when you get him with this coaching staff, which has shown an ability to take young talent and develop it? So I'm excited to see him, but everybody's got a story. I mean, Hooker obviously is a guy that was probably trending towards being a top 5 pick in November, and now all of a sudden you're able to get him in the 3rd round. But obviously there's questions about, the knee coming out of a Tennessee system that's very different than most things that you'll see. So, I think there's a lot of guys in this draft that I see guys that I think will help right away, and I see guys that I'm intrigued to see what they can ultimately become.
You can let the cat sit on your lap, Dan. You
I
can.
know. She is just dying to come in there.
Give her a little FaceTime. Give her a little FaceTime.
We don't take ourselves that serious over here. You're more than
That is
fine.
awesome.
I agree with you 100%. I love the Brian Branch. Look at the cat. That's what I'm talking about. I love the cat as well, but I love the pick of Brian Branch as you do. And also, what do you think about this, Dan? You look at what the Texans stand to spend on their rookies. I think it's 109. I think the Seahawks are going to spend 90. The Detroit Lions got every player that they wanted for the most part, and they're spending $69 million. That's the stuff people don't talk about.
Yeah, and they moved around a lot, and I think Brad Holmes was able to do some things with the board to give themselves the ability to move up and get Branch, to trade back, get some value, and still get Gibbs, and then they picked up that pick early in the 2nd round. So I give credit to him, and I asked him, and I was serious, who in the heck keeps track of what picks you have and what picks you don't? Because Friday night, I couldn't keep track. It was crazy. It was just just trade after trade after trade. And I'd have been walking up there with a card. They'd have been like, dude, it's not your pick right now. You traded that. But it was, I think that, I give him credit for that and just being locked in on what they wanted to do. Look, I mean, fact is, guys, and Braylon, you know this better than anybody. We do not know, where this, I give up. We do not know where this draft is going to go or how these guys are ultimately going to be. And we're talking right now about being excited by potential. In the end, we'll judge it by reality and what these guys are able to produce. And like I said, Braylon, you've been there, you understand that, and you've seen hotshot rookies come in and probably looked at them on day one and gone, not going to make it. So we'll see what's going to happen with these guys. But I think they're very comfortable with what they did. And I'm excited to see. Look, Gibbs is a different talent, man. That is something that I'm excited to see what Ben Johnson can do with that. I think Campbell is a guy that I made the statement the other night on our show. I'll be shocked, and I'm just kind of shorting him 1 year as a rookie to not know how much he's going to play right away. I bet you this guy leads his team in tackles at least 2 out of the next 3 years. I think he's one of those guys that's just going to stack back there. And they need a little bit to be a little more stout back there. They were not good against the run last year, and he can give him some help at the 2nd level. So I think, it's fun to project what they might be. The real fun becomes when you figure out that they're who you think they are.
Hey, Dan, are you? I don't want to say if you're surprised that Swift got traded, but are you surprised that he got traded to what many people believe will be the Lions' chief competition, the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think probably Brad Holmes placed as many calls as he could, took as many calls as he could, and found the best offer. I think at the end of the day, you got to do what you can to maximize what you can get for him. And the problem is, with all due respect to DeAndre, look, the other teams saw the games that he's missed and the fact that, his availability has been a question, and that's a problem. I imagine if he would have gotten offered something better by somebody else, he would have made the trade. I think that's the best that he could do at that moment. So I'm not surprised he got traded, because I don't think with Gibbs coming in there was necessarily a role for him. And I don't think that DeAndre would have been happy with extremely limited snaps, coming into the season. And I think we all saw the writing on the wall that this was the final year of his contract. And based on what we had seen to this point, there was no reason to think that they were going to extend him.
Talking to Dan Miller, voice of the Lions, Fox 2 sports director. Dan, obviously you look at the draft, and Hendon Hooker, you mentioned him a minute ago, 3rd round pick. A lot of people looking at that. The Lions finally drafted perhaps a future quarterback. Where do things stand right now? How do you see things playing out between Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker, or what any plan will be long term?
This is Jared Goff's job. And Jared Goff is going into this year as the quarterback of a team that is favored to win the NFC North. And I think where this goes from here will depend on how Jared Goff plays. Now, look, there's things that will happen around him that will not be his fault. But for what he can control, is Jared Goff the quarterback that we saw for the last 10 or so games last year, who was careful with the football, moved that offense up and down the field, top 5 offense in terms of scoring, and did great? Or is he the quarterback that we saw early in the season where the ball security was a question? And look, if Goff is the guy that we saw in Los Angeles for a couple of years with the Rams before things kind of went a little bit sideways there, or if Goff is the guy that we saw in the last half of last year when this team went 8-2 down the stretch, Hendon Hooker's not going to be the quarterback for the Detroit Lions. It will be Jared Goff, and we'll see what happens to Hendon Hooker, whether or not he becomes trade bait as a valuable piece or is the backup quarterback here. But in my mind, if Jared Goff is as good as he was at the end of last year in leading this team, playing football the way he did, they'll pay him, they'll keep him, and I think they want him to be the quarterback. I think they brought in Hooker, because that's great value at that point in the draft, and we don't know where this will go with Goff, but I think their intention is that Jared Goff is their quarterback, and I just think if this team is capable of doing and does do what we think they can, Goff's going to be the quarterback, and I think he'll be around here for a while. But the interesting thing is, look, he's 2 years left on a contract, so probably at the end of this year, it's a discussion that you have to have. I think his play and his production will dictate how those discussions go. But he goes in my mind, as the quarterback with the job to lose.
Dan, let's make some projections. Let's look ahead a little bit. You look at the Detroit Lions and how Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have constructed this team. You look at what they've done in the draft and the offseason. Outside of the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, are there any teams that you're immediately worried about in the NFL based on what Brad Holmes has done with this team?
Yeah, I still think Buffalo is up there, and we're waiting for them to kind of take that next step. They're still really good offensively and defensively. Just in this division, we'll see what happens with Minnesota. I'm not projecting them as being completely out of it, as some people have. I mean, they still have an explosive running game. They still have maybe the best receiver, or certainly one of them in the league. Cousins can win games. They have problems defensively, but let's see how they attack those. I just think that San Francisco is still really good. I mean, look what they did last year with all the injuries that they had. So I think there's other teams out there that you absolutely have to look at. But I think what the Lions have done is put themselves in the conversation. But frankly, that's all they've done. I mean, the 8-2 finish was great. Would have been great to see them have a chance to get into the playoffs. But, now you're coming at this thing from a much different angle. You're coming at this thing as the favorite. And I'm not saying they surprised people last year, because once they started playing well, people knew what was coming. But I do think that there is a difference when you go in as the favorite and you kind of wear that and you understand those expectations versus when they came in last year with certainly that expectations of themselves, but there was not on the outside. Everything they're going to hear this year is about what they're expected to do. And if they get off to a great start, that thing builds. If they don't, I can start banging in your ears a little bit if you're not where people expected you to be. So I think they've put themselves in a great position. But as I say, that's really all they've done. Now you got to go out and earn it.
Great point, D. Mills.
Hey, Dan, just circle back with me for just a couple of quick questions.
It's his favorite
here.
phrase. And then we'll let you go, Dan.
Hey, Jared Goff. Jared Goff's a starter. Hendon Hooker's the rookie. Nate Sudfeld, they signed him. Who's the backup quarterback for the Detroit Lions?
It's a great question. Brad Holmes was asked at his press conference, are you still interested in signing a veteran backup? And Teddy Bridgewater is obviously the guy that's out there that they apparently made a bid for. I don't know if they're still actively doing that. Look, Hooker isn't expected to be cleared until, I think they said, and Brad Holmes won't even put a timeline on it, but some of the things that I read said maybe week 1 of the regular season. That's a little bit dicey to count on a rookie if you consider yourself a team that is going to win the division, expected to win the division. So the answer right now, I think, is Nate Sudfeld. But the question is, are they still in the market to bring in a veteran and somebody that they're looking to back up Goff in case something happens to him, because you could see this thing going in the wrong direction very quickly if you don't have a capable backup back there ready to step in and run this team. And I don't know, based on the timeline or lack thereof, that you can count on Hooker being that guy. And Sudfeld just hasn't proven that in the NFL.
Last one for me, Dan, is I got to go back to DeAndre Swift. Why not hold this guy over? It's his last year. When he leaves, you're going to get a comp pick anyway. Philly's going to get a compensatory pick if they don't re-sign him. We got a pick 2 years from now in the 4th round. We traded him to the best team in the NFC. Why not hold this guy as at least a backup to the guys that we have? What if someone gets injured? I mean, why not put Swift in? He only plays 50, 60% of the time anyway.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't know that DeAndre Swift had an interest in that. If you look
not
at
his
the reports,
choice.
His agents were. Yeah, I understand that, but also you have to consider the locker room, and you have to consider, if a player is going to be there that absolutely doesn't want to be there. And it seems like, based on the reports, very quickly his representatives got on the phone with the Lions and said, "We want to be traded." That's what the reports basically said, and I think the Lions were probably moving in that direction anyway. Maz, I just don't know that they looked at Swift that was going to be a guy that was happy playing either no snaps a game and not in uniform, or playing 2 snaps a game, 3 snaps a game, or something like that. Look, they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs to put him on the field.
Yeah.
They didn't draft him to split time with anybody. They drafted him to be side by side with Montgomery, and I think play together a lot.
Yep.
And there just wasn't a role for Swift at that point. It's a fair question. I get it. I just don't know that they thought that was the best thing going forward for them or for Swift, in particular, understanding that it was the last year of his deal and they were in essence drafting his replacement.
I got mad because it just pisses me off. That's all. I don't want to give him away for nothing.
Maz, if he
and
don't
listen,
wanna,
I would take a 6th round.
Maz,
I would take a 7th round pick from him.
If
not
he
the
don't
Philly.
want to be here, he doesn't want to be
Okay,
here.
then
Was
give me
it
a-
slavery? He
then
don't want
give
to
me
be
a
Matt,
here.
is this about Swift?
Exactly. Thank you, Dan.
I don't want the Eagles to have him.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Hey, Dan, Braylon was yelling at Maz yesterday about this very thing because he said exactly what you said.
the locker
The
room.
locker room. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't want this guy in our room. Doesn't want to be here.
That locker room can be ugly when they see a guy not wanting to be there.
Yeah.
Like when they were 1-6, Dan tell me he wasn't on the field, he wasn't playing a lot, but then they start to win. Guys in the locker room like, whoa, this guy wants to play now. What happened when we were 1-6? Like that's how guys in the locker room view things, man.
You would know.
Yeah.
No,
You would think.
Braylon would know, and I think if his representatives were that quick to react, then you know where that's coming from as well. That's coming from the player, and I think it's probably just best for everybody involved. And you know what? Sometimes it's better to just make a break. Now, granted, they need to find probably a 3rd running back now, and whether it's the kid from Minnesota, Ibrahim or Ibrahim.
You'll figure it out by August.
Muhammad Ibrahim.
I loved him in college. He's fun to watch.
Of course.
Right. Craig Reynolds still out there. I mean,
Justin
hell.
Jackson played an important role
I like
for this
JJ.
team last year, and he's still out there. So we'll see what happens. But point well taken. You've got to have some depth, and right now I think that's probably what they're working on.
The great
from
Dan
Georgia.
Miller, thanks so much for the
Thanks,
time, my
Dan.
friend. We held you over a lot longer than we told you.
Don't say we. It was Maz.
It was Maz,
It was
actually.
Maz.
Yeah, it was
It was
Maz's
Maz.
fault. Thanks, buddy. We appreciate you, and all the love to your cat as well for
I
making the
appreciate
appearance.
you guys. I'll circle back with you.
I appreciate it.
Good.
Take care, Dan.
The great Dan Miller, everybody. Check him out on Fox 2, and, of course, Detroit Lions. Guys, I want to get to some Lions talk. By the way, how, I don't want to say great, but it was a little awesome yesterday not having the Lions playing.
Relaxing.
It was relaxing, and it was relaxing, I think, because they came in off the win and are 6-2 instead of that loss 5-3. If they were 5-3 after a loss to the Raiders, you want to play. You want to sit there and you want to get back out there as quickly as possible. But it was nice to take a little breather
Hell yeah. You go to
with a
sleep.
6-2 record. It was
Not-
kind of nice.
Not to mention they're number 2 in the NFC. That was a great nap, and they stayed number 2 obviously because of the Eagles. We'll talk about that, but yeah, it's great, man. When you're sitting at 2 as a fan or a player, you're sitting at number 2 in your conference, 6-2. Life is good. Life is absolutely good.
No doubt. I wanted to talk to this. Brad Holmes. Dan Campbell said today that the Lions are getting healthier. The 3 players that were out, they'll know tomorrow and how they gear up in the practice, but they all participated today, and it all looks good, trending towards the right direction to have them play Sunday at the Chargers, David Montgomery included. First of all, we said, Bray, key to the second half, get healthy and stay healthy.
Yeah.
If these guys can get healthy, that's step 1 in the process.
100%. Get these guys healthy. And part of getting guys healthy is, it's trusting the players. At the same time, it's also giving them a little push in the right direction if they need some. So they've done a good job sitting guys out. They could have had guys potentially play last week, I believe, but they said sit guys out. You get them for the next week when you play against the Chargers this coming week. So get guys healthy. Ease them back into the process. But if you see that they can go, it's time to get them back.
And I think, Maz, that's one of the reasons why they didn't put David Montgomery on the IR or Jonah Jackson.
They got him back an extra
Frank
week early.
Ragnow,
Yep.
right,
We need those guys back, man. Do you know, out of the 8 games that they've played, they've had 7 different line combinations. 7 different offensive line combos. When they're playing their best 5, they are top 3 in the league. They have been patchworked all through this, and they still have 6 wins. You got to be happy about that. Could have had 7 if they just tightened it up against Seattle.
Definitely got to be happy about that, Maz. And you bring up a good point, getting guys back, Ryan Ermanni. See, now is the time, especially look at the way the schedule is shaping up. See, this team hasn't had everybody play together. So now is the time to build chemistry. Now is the time to build cohesion going into, well, not in the playoffs yet. Let me not get ahead of myself. But as we're getting ready for that stretch run to win the division, to get into the playoffs, to host our first game at home, you got to get guys to understand guys like Jameson. Like, you got to understand Jameson. You got David Montgomery. You'll get him back. You got to get David Montgomery now back, playing with Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now playing a lot better. It's on the defensive side as well. So the cohesion and the chemistry is what's very valuable right now, because they got to remember, this is still a young team, and it's still a new team to a certain extent. Got to build that chemistry now so that when you're in January, you're not looking around trying to figure out what a guy is thinking and what a guy is on. You know what that guy is thinking. You know what's going without even having to talk to him.
It's so important to get these guys all together. And again, they're coming up on a portion of their schedule, too, that is ripe for the pickings, man. If you can just somehow say, well, Maz, what did you say about the offensive line combinations?
7 out of 8 games have been different.
It's hard to win that way.
Yes.
And it just speaks to the depth that this team has. I wanted to play for you this audio from Dan Campbell earlier today. This is what he said when asked about what the team's goals are now moving forward.
December, we need to be playing our best football collectively and up to date. Like the Chargers, we need to play our best football game. We still have left so much out there, and as good as we played to get 6 wins, we've been able to complement each other, but yet I would say we have not played our best football collectively, offense, defense, and special teams. So we got to play a clean game. We got to come out with no turnovers. We need to get our takeaways back. We talked about red zone and those things. We need a fast start in the third quarter. So I just think cleaning some of those things up, our focus to the details of what we're doing, got to take another step up, another notch up.
Isn't that money?
Yeah.
They have left so much out there that by December, so that's 3 games more. Yeah. They've got the Chargers, they've got the Bears, and they've got the Packers on Thanksgiving Day before they get to December. This week specifically, but over the next 3 weeks for sure, you want to be playing your best football going into December here, Braylon, when it really matters. And I think that is a great goal for this football team. Not play hard, because they have been playing hard, but just put it all together. I feel like this team has not put it all together just yet.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see when they all put together. And he's absolutely right. When Dave Montgomery has gone off, Jared Goff has had just an okay game. When Jared Goff was going off and David Montgomery was hurt early on in the year, trying to figure Jahmyr Gibbs out, that didn't necessarily look good. You look on defense, they get some players healthy, they get some players back, they get some players injured. And also, playing your best football, how you get to that point, you start to play. Every play matters. Every play counts. It's no longer. It can't be the next play. It's got to be that play. Teams that are clicking on all cylinders, they look like the Eagles did last night. Teams that are not clicking on all cylinders look like the Dallas Cowboys. Damn good team, but you know who was a better team. That's what the Lions want to do. The Lions want to get to the point where you know they're not leaving anything out there. And you don't want to leave anything out there in November and December, because that's the difference between first and NFC, and it's also the difference between confidence. It's also the difference between have done it. If you do it, we can do it again.
Hey, go back to the teams in the 90s. The 91 team that won the playoff game. After that, all those Wayne Fonts teams, they all started getting hot around Thanksgiving and made their playoff push. The 90s Lions made the playoffs as much as any other team in the NFL. They only won one game, but they made the playoffs a lot. You forget about that.
Right, 91, 93,
Yeah.
95, 97, 99,
Just like
five times.
Yeah, like the Cowboys. And they beat that young Cowboy team that became a Super Bowl champion just a few years after that. The big triplets that were just starting. So this team just has to get healthy, guys. It's very simple, this game. If you're healthy, look at Joe Burrow last night.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow looks like Tom Brady. When he's healthy, he's the man. When he was limping on one leg the first 3-4 weeks of the season, we said, oh, man, Joe Burrow's all done. Get healthy. Last year, they were the healthiest team down the stretch, and they would have been a danger had they made the playoffs. Just get healthy. Keep your fingers crossed, Lion fans. That's all you got to hope for, because they got the goods.
It's funny you brought up that Dallas Cowboys team. I was watching the interview recently, and it was talking about, I think it was talking Jimmy Johnson. It was talking about how he had the jump in terms of the draft classes. When you come in out of college, you know all the players that you played against. You know all the players that you missed out on and picking up. Same thing with Pete Carroll. Look, when he got to Seattle after leaving USC. So I thought that was interesting. But, yeah, one of the other things about staying healthy, people probably think out there like, how are you going to stay healthy? If you get hurt, you're hurt. Right. How you stay healthy is how you come in for treatment. How your coaches has you in practice. Does he make you practice when you shouldn't practice? Does he lay off? Does he actually let you have too many free days off? And now you come back, you're a little stuffy, and you maybe get a little strain or something. It's about the coach and the training working together, working cohesion with the player as well. That's how you stay healthy. There's certain things you got to do. You got to take care of your body. You got to do the little things they tell you. Coming after practice for the stem. Coming in, ice your ankle in the morning or whatever is hurting. Get the ultrasound. You got to do what you got to do to stay healthy. It's not what they tell you to do. Like real players, true professionals, they want to take care of themselves. They're at the facilities at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. They're staying late, getting extra treatment and things like that. You're a part of that process as a player, and I think they understand that down in Allen Park.
Yeah, and, you know, for the Detroit Lions to where they are in the season, to be 6-2 and not play your best football, that has to give you a little bit of confidence as well when you know that you're winning games and you're not really playing your best football. You know, I mean, you can go in, not play your best, and just take a look at the Raiders game as an example of that. They had 3 turnovers, including a pick 6, had a touchdown called back, and missed a field goal, and they still won by double digits. Yeah. What Lions team do you know that could overcome all of that? Yeah. And a touchdown called back, by the way.
None.
So that's a pretty darn good place to be if you're the Detroit Lions.
I just want to say something about that loss to the Ravens. They're good. Look what they did to Seattle yesterday. They're good.
I was thinking about that yesterday too when they put a hurt on Seattle. It's like, does that change your mind about the Lions' loss? The way the Ravens manhandled Seattle, does that change the way you feel about the Lions' loss? Because I don't think there's too many people today that are sitting back calling Seattle a fraud or saying they haven't played anybody or saying that their season's over or they can't beat anybody. Nobody's saying that today about Seattle. They're talking about how good Baltimore is, but it's not about how bad Seattle is. Trade deadline is 30 minutes or so away in the NFL right now. There have been some pretty big deals, and a lot of people got better, including, we believe, the Detroit Lions. They acquired Donovan Peoples-Jones, the Detroit Cass Tech kid from the University of Michigan, goes from the Browns to the Lions for a 2025 sixth-round pick. The Commanders, Washington was busy today. They sent Chase Young, defensive end, to the San Francisco 49ers for a third-round pick. Montez Sweat. Here's a curious one, too, just quickly on him. What in the world are the Chicago Bears doing? Why would you burn a second-round pick on a guy that you could sign in a couple of months from now?
Maybe to lock him up so he don't go anywhere else. I don't know what to do. And they gave that second-round pick up for Chase Claypool, if you remember last year.
It is so dumb what they did because Michael Lombardi says today, a former executive in the league for the Patriots, he says, if you're Chicago, what are you doing? It's the dumbest trade in the history of football because you don't want to win right now. So what if Montez Sweat comes up with like a 3-sack game or something like that in week 17 and you win 5 games now instead of 4, and instead of getting a top 3 pick, you go to 8, 9, or 10 because of this, and it totally takes you out of any
they got 2
spot
number
of
ones.
leverage. But again, it takes you out of any spot of leverage that you could possibly have. So
sounds like Lovie Smith last year with Houston Texans. It hit the last game of the season.
Yeah, winning that game.
But
It didn't hurt him, though.
It didn't. This has been the Bears, though, and this is what we're talking about. Justin Fields. Look, Justin Fields may not be it, Ryan Ermanni, but I still stand by what I said about just the Chicago Bears organization. Like they went to a Super Bowl, man. I understand in 2006, but always on the defensive side of things, coaches just never seem to get it. Eberflus, like, why are we going on the defensive side right now? I just can never figure them out. I just don't understand.
For Donovan Peoples-Jones, Braylon, you have gone through what he is going through right now. How long does it take to get a guy acclimated to a playbook, acclimated to a locker room, a chemistry with the quarterback? How long does that process take? And take me through what is happening at this moment right now with Donovan Peoples-Jones.
2009, I think I got traded right before the trade deadline, kind of like similar type deal. Go from Cleveland, New York Jets, walk in there. Ryan, at the end of the day, it's about what do you want to be? How much work do you want to put in? Like when I got there, I was so happy to be out of Cleveland.
What did Cleveland tell you? Who told you?
Eric Mangini called me at like 6 a.m., 6:15 a.m. And then I picked up and he said, hey, come by when you get a chance. So I went in and go in his office and he said, hey, we've moved you to the New York Jets. It took everything in me, like, hold my excitement in. I was like, thank God I'm out of here. But it was the truth. I was so happy to get out of there. But to your point, Ryan, when I got there, I was so happy to get out of Cleveland that I instantly, went up to Mark. Hey, Mark, what's going on? Braylon Edwards. I just stayed in front of Mark the whole time. I was like, hey, you want to watch film? I'm going to watch film. What are you looking for in a Z receiver? Like, what are your favorite routes to throw? What are you comfortable throwing? Let me see the playbook. Let me watch film with you. You try and get a bite to eat? I'm hungry. You hungry? Like, I just was trying to be with him the whole time. Like, pause. In like terms of hitting like food.
Was he up for it?
He was. He was a kid. Like Mike, he was a USC kid. So USC Michigan. There's always got kind of a natural relationship there. He was super cool, surfer guy, and we just hung out a lot. But I was willing to put in all the work. I was like, yo, let's watch film. Yo, you want to stay at the facility to 9? I can stay to 7:30. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I wanted to put that work in so he knew he could trust me. Like, he knew I was coming over, I had been in the Pro Bowl, blah, 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 but I wanted him to know that, hey, I'm on your team. Like, I'm working with you. I want to see what you got. So, Donovan Peoples-Jones, my advice to him is he's coming into a situation with a guy that's actually a leader, an actual veteran, an actual guy that's been to a Super Bowl in Jared Goff. If he comes in with that same energy, that same attitude, hey, what do you expect of me? What do you need from me? Boom, boom, boom. Jared Goff is a leader that's going to be appreciative of that. He's going to say, this guy's coming to work. This guy is understanding that we're a team. This guy's understanding that he's one of a whole and not one of one. So if he comes in with that energy, I think Jared Goff and him will hit it off well. He's going to put in some work because Ben Johnson and Jared Goff have been working on this offense for the last 2.5 years.
What about the language, the terminology? Like how – I mean, and my only knowledge from that is by watching that quarterback documentary, and it felt like a foreign language. How quickly can something like that happen?
The good news is the good news is a lot of these languages, a lot of these systems, it's only 4 or 5 systems in the league. So a lot of the language is similar. If you get with the right system, I mean, you know how the tree falls. If you're off the Kyle Shanahan tree or Josh McVay or insert coach here, it's a little easier. So I think he's coming from Kevin Stefanski or Kyle Stefanski. So I got to see how that relates to Ben Johnson and what Ben Johnson did. But it's a lot of similar language. At the end of the day, you just got to figure out what the word. Sometimes people use F, sometimes people use X. Or A, excuse me. It depends, but it'll be all right.
When you went to the Jets from Cleveland in season, how many games did it take for you to feel like, I got this?
I'm so arrogant. We played on Monday night. Like my first game with the Jets was on Monday night. Maz remembers that game. We played the Jets in Miami. They ended up winning on the Wildcat at the end of the game. It was Ronnie Brown to Ricky Williams or something. I was pissed, but caught 2 touchdowns. Like it felt natural.
You were ready to go from the jump.
I was ready to get the hell out of Cleveland, but I think also too, like spending that time with Mark, like that week. So I get traded Tuesday. I get traded Wednesday. So I get there Wednesday, and I get there just in time for team picture. Like just literally, I'm flying in, they pick me up, they bring me to the facility. They were literally about to take the team photo, so I barely made it.
With uniform?
Yeah, like with the Jets
So
uniform.
they got everything set for you.
So everything set, had my locker room, and this one I realized, I'm like, oh shoot, the Jets are green and white.
Wow.
I freaking hate green and white. But it was spending that time with him Wednesday night, like Thursday morning before meetings, Thursday night. Friday we went to dinner. We went out to the city, he and the other quarterbacks, and me and Jericho Cotchery. Spending that time with him, we had a moment in the huddle. I was like, hey man, just relax, just throw the ball up. And he did, and so like we started rocking and rolling like week 1. But I spent 4 days with him. Yeah.
So number 17 was available, obviously.
No.
It wasn't.
No.
So what did they ask you?
They asked me what I was like, give me my number. So they took it from another receiver. What was his name? Wallace something? I don't know, he took it from.
So
I was gonna.
But is that something they ask you on your way there, so they have the uniform ready for you?
100%.
They ask, what number you want?
Yeah.
I want 17. Oh, that's taken.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But at the same time, too, it's like depending on who has it, you can have a conversation about paying,
of course,
for the jersey. So I actually just took it and they gave it to me, but then I felt bad and I gave them some compensation.
All right, guys.
What'd you give him, $100?
I gave him $2,000.
Oh, that is sweet.
It's a lot of money, man.
That was cheap compared to what Plaxico had to give up for the kicker.
So just sum up for me this trade deadline. Lions do improve the wide receiver position, but nothing at the defensive back, nothing on the defensive end. How do you feel about it, Braylon Edwards?
I think they looked at their team last night, and I think they looked at the team for the majority of their 8-game season so far. You see who got the game balls last night: Jerry Jacobs, Cam Sutton. You see Kirby Joseph, first interception. Tracy Walker, 2 out of the last 3 games has played well. He's got 2 sacks. He's got some pass breakups. He's been knocking guys out. So I think they like their secondary more than we do. Brian Branch is another guy we forgot about that's going to be coming back.
Did he get hurt a little last night?
Nah,
but
he's watching him a little bit. He's just getting back into it.
Yeah, he's getting back into it. Because you got to think he was a rookie starting to hit stride, then he got hurt. So you got him coming back. You see the defensive line last night. You see Aleem McNeil get some sacks. You see Anzalone off the edge.
6 sacks.
So I think they looked and said, hey, look, you know what? We got guys coming back like we were at. We're 6-2. We don't need to overspend. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we do something in the interim period right now that we're going to look back in April like, damn, I wish I had my 3rd round pick. Like, damn, I wish we wouldn't have done that. So that's the move. They feel like they needed a wide receiver to shore up that position for Jared Goff and the run game too. I'm cool with it.
I'm very cool with the way this trade deadline worked. I'm totally fine. I think Brad Holmes is as smart a general manager and is as measured a general manager as you will find in the National Football League. And I'll tell you this much. He's done so well for this franchise. He has gotten this team over the last 3 years to the point where last night was just a beautiful scene in Detroit. Monday Night Football. The city looked great. The team looked great. Well, the team didn't look that great, but
Right.
they're 6-2 at the break. They're going to make a run now. They're going to get some guys healthy. I am more than okay with this trade deadline.
Yeah, you're gonna run sometimes, man. Like you'll have games like this where, it was 26-12, or it was 26-12, but you knew they were gonna win the game. They dominated for the most part. We've been a part of some games like that, but the best thing to pay attention to, and the best thing to say, as you said already, Ryan, they're bye week. They're 6-2, and they look pretty damn good. And look at the rest of the schedule. Lines up perfect for them. You talk about the bye week, getting people back, getting Peoples Jones acclimated to the system, figuring out playing against the Chargers. And then you look at the rest. Chicago Bears don't look that good. The Vikings don't look that good, especially now with Kirk Cousins out. Josh Dobbs. Sure, you talking about wide receiver picking up offense. How long does it take a quarterback to pick up offense? So, with that being said, if they get to the playoffs, they win the division, they win the first game at home, hey, next year again, right? So
I just want to read for you a tweet from Jennifer Hammond. So that Dan Campbell reaffirming on how thorough the Lions were in the trade market, said it had to be the right person, the right pick at the right price, and that's just what it is. Parker, do you have something?
Yeah. We talk about the Bears, and then we talk about the Niners getting Montez Sweat and Chase Young. You know what I think when I hear that we just got DPJ? We didn't panic. We didn't panic because we're down and out. We have a lot of guys injured. We didn't panic. I think the Niners somewhat panicked a little bit after the 2 losses they had.
3.
Against. Oh yeah, you're right. 3. Excuse me. You're right. Against Vikings, the Bengals, and then I can't think of the other loss, but I think the Bears also are panicking. They're trying to figure out what this team is. Justin Fields hasn't been going the way that they all expected this year, so I think Brad Holmes played the right move where he sat in his place, did what he knew would be the best move at that time, and didn't do too much.